Duke Fenric, you are accused of the murder of Prince Atari Hanan and Duke Noah Dyverne. What did you just hear? They caught the Duke. As soon as the order was issued, some soldiers pushed the pale-faced Hannah aside and stormed into the bedroom. And it was that very moment. Get out, Fenric said, wrapping the blanket around Presepe and looking at them sharply. Now, right away. If you don't want to die. It was unbelievable, the man saying these words did not even carry a single sword, and yet the people who were confused were the armed soldiers. Even the man who seemed to be their leader, who had just been shouting for Fenric's arrest, was biting his lip in confusion. And Fenric was staring at him as if he was going to kill him. It was not difficult to expect that Dietrich would not stand idly by. After being rejected in front of Presepe twice, it was natural for him to hold a grudge. But now the situation was very bad, and the reason was Vidar. At this particular time. But Dietrich had drawn his sword. If he had been alone, things would have been different, but having Presepe with him made the situation much more dangerous. So Fenric stared at them again and continued, I will not repeat myself. Go out and wait outside. Otherwise I will gouge out your eyes, right here and now. Fenric's tone dripped with murder, and the soldiers became confused and retreated back. The commander in front let out a heavy sigh, while Presepe opened her mouth with a confused face. This is impossible. Why would Duke Fenric kill these people? It was ridiculous. Making such an accusation against someone who has nothing to do with them at all. Even if Dietrich had lost his mind, she did not expect him to stoop so lowly. Weren't there witnesses who saw Duke Fenric at the celebration party at the time of Atari Hanan's murder? And the same goes for Noah Dyverne. Madam Presepe, please get ready. The man said, averting his gaze. His Majesty has ordered that you accompany him as well. That was the end of the conversation. The man walked out with the soldiers, leaving a frozen Presepe and a scowling Fenric in the room. There was a cold silence in the bedroom, and then Fenric turned softly to Presepe. If I'm even a little late because of Dietrich. Leaving Presepe alone in the palace would be extremely dangerous. Arriving at a palace without a master would be very easy for Vidar. Maybe Presepe will return to the tower. Perhaps it would be safer, as long as she was in the imperial palace, he would be able to find a way to get her out. Even if he had to antagonize the emperor and get out of Atloya. The only problem was Presepe's heart. He knew better than anyone that she would not want to return to the imperial palace. I will go with you. But Presepe said something he hadn't thought of. I can't let you go alone, Duke. Of course, even if I go I won't be of much help, but still, even if I stay here alone, nothing will improve at all. On the contrary, my anxiety will only increase. She did not like the idea of returning to the imperial palace, but was extremely terrified at the prospect of being locked up in that cage-like tower again. But after seeing how recklessly Dietrich insisted, there was no way she was going to let Fenric go alone. Why are you doing this to me to this extent? What? Isn't the palace a terrible place for Pris? She did not understand, as Precipice's face, which was happy when she left the palace, was still clear in his mind. But Presepe answered in a very different way than Fenric had expected, and very simply. Remember when you asked me the same thing, what did you say? The sparkle in Fenric's red eyes quivered for a moment as he filled them with Presepe. You said you were important to me. So do I. If I were you, you wouldn't let me go alone. So, let's go together. Her decision has already been proven. No matter what happened, she decided to stay by Fenric's side until the end of this cursed game, from the moment she confessed her feelings to him. So she couldn't let him go alone. Fenric looked at her silently. He felt betrayed and abandoned, desperate and afraid that she would leave him alone and leave at any moment. But that small, white hand that held him seemed to him full of intense hope, and whether this was the cause of his pain or vice versa he did not know. Yes. I understand. But don't exaggerate. Anyway, I will leave the palace with you, Presepe. Dietrich's face looking at Fenric was filled with intense coldness. But Fenric was staring at him the same way. The two looked at each other in complete silence, while a heavy silence fell over the royal hall. Really, Fenric was the first to break the silence. It seems that His Majesty has found strong evidence. If it were not for that, I would not have been arrested at this time. Dietrich knew very well what the time like this to which Fenric had referred meant. The murders of Atari Hanan and Noah Dyverne and the death of Evan were different. In addition, Fenric had evidence of his innocence, and there were many witnesses willing to testify if necessary. While the killing of the first two people could be considered ordinary murder, Ivan's death was tinged with mystery. Simply put, if the real perpetrator resurfaces and commits another crime, it could create greater danger. But Dietrich didn't care much. He's already reached this point. Do you think, Fenric, that I won't find evidence? He pointed to a bodyguard, who placed before Fenric the evidence that had been prepared in advance. Fenric's face was a little complicated as he looked at the ground, chained up. What the guard placed in front of him was a brown envelope sealed with Fenric's seal, and a rotting griffin head emitting a foul odor. The guard carefully dropped the envelope, and dried black grasses fell to the ground as if they were embroidery. It was moon grass. Now you understand, right? Dietrich stood and advanced slowly towards Fenric, then bent down to meet him at the same level. It's so weak evidence it's not even worth mentioning. Even with your seal on the envelope, there is no evidence that you traded these herbs, and we cannot be certain that this griffin was the one that bit Noah Dyverne's neck. Dietrich's eyes sparkle suspiciously. But I can use it as I please. You know, what's most important is the justification, Fenric. That's always the case. Ha! Of course, I don't want you to think that I collected this shoddy evidence myself. Fenric's eyebrows rose. Unfortunately, I seem to have a lot of enemies. But it works to my advantage. Someone left these humiliating things in front of the Emperor's bedroom without any warning or message. Dietrich didn't know who that person was, but he made one thing clear. That person and my goal are one. Dietrich smiled wryly as he looked at Fenric. Even under these circumstances, Fenric's face was dry and expressionless. He stared at Dietrich calmly. I always wondered, said Dietrich, grabbing Fenric's chin and tearing it apart in a muffled voice. Why did I never understand? Why did it have to be you? He couldn't understand it no matter how hard he tried. Why did Presepe decide to stay by Fenric's side? I was begging like a beggar to save me. You promised me you wouldn't hurt me, so why? There's nothing you can do for him. Dietrich continued sarcastically. Look, now you're just a prisoner, you can't do anything. And yet you dare, okay. Fenric listened silently to Dietrich's speech, then smiled sarcastically and said, sorry, but I know that well. What? Did you see Presepe smile sincerely for even a moment while she was in the palace? Dietrich stopped suddenly. Did you talk about what you like, what you hate, those little things? You never did you? Because the palace, Your Majesty, was a very painful place for Presepe. Fenric had no memories of any such conversation. Whenever he was with Presepe, she only showed him two sides, she's either crying or her expression dries up as if she's going to wither. This may be annoying, Your Majesty, but people usually use expressions like this in such situations. When someone screams for no reason. Fenric laughed. Men who are abandoned are usually of no great importance. But the truth is that the real bottom is only seen after abandonment. What? When a person who doesn't reciprocate his feelings clings and eventually ties his feet and stays close just for control. Isn't that pathetic? Fenric looked at Dietrich, who was gritting his teeth, and continued, even if a person is created that way by nature, someone who has not been abandoned finds it just funny. He didn't quite understand what he meant, but he did realize one thing, Fenric was boldly mocking him. But Fenric did not wait for Dietrich's response, but rather looked at him and asked him, "Do you really think that, in this situation, I can do nothing?" Dietrich stopped suddenly. He was looking at him with a murderous look from his red eyes, making the atmosphere tense.